Hey, we're back. So it's time for Unit 2 this week. And what that means is that we're going to be talking about two separate but also similar related things. First of all, we're going to be talking about the historical theories of child development. So we're going to be talking about the theories of Sigmund Freud and Erik Erikson, Jean Piaget, all those sorts of folks that maybe you've heard of before. General psychology is not a prerequisite for this course, so it's possible you haven't heard of them before. So a lot of students ask me, do I need to memorize all this stuff about these people? And here's what I'm going to tell you. So you will, if you're a psychology major, you will encounter information about these theorists often throughout your studies. And so my suggestion to you is to read the text for every single course where you are learning about the theorists, and practice the information, learn it as well as you can. And what you will see over time is that it will become kind of second nature to you. So the things that maybe you're learning for the first time in this class are going to become things that that's just what psychology majors know by the time you graduate, maybe with your bachelor's degree. So if this is your first time encountering Freud's psychosexual theory of development, then yes, you definitely need to spend some time learning about it. If it's your fourth, fifth, sixth time learning about it, then you can go through it and see which parts maybe you don't remember as well. And like I said, just keep reviewing it every time it comes up, and it will become second nature to you. The assignment that we have that goes along with the theorists for this week is really going to help you practice with the knowledge relating to the different types of theorists and the different theorists themselves and their theories. So we do have an activity that specifically relates to the theorists, and that will help you interact with your textbook. So yes, you can use your textbook while you're doing that. You can use your notes. You can use whatever you want. And you can take that you can do that assignment as many times as you want to get the highest score possible. And so, yeah, why do we have to study most of these old dudes? Well, that's a great question. There's nobody that has 100% quote unquote the answer. But all of them throughout the history of psychology have influenced how we think about children and child development as a culture, and as a field. And so it gives us an idea, studying all of them gives us an idea of where those thoughts, where those theories came from. And so that's the reason why consistently throughout your classes, you're going to be hearing about, Freud and Erikson and all that sort of stuff. A couple things I do want to remind you about is that when we're reading about Freud, remember that the translation of his work was not done well, and that whenever he talked about pleasure, it got translated into sexual pleasure. And so a lot of times people have this thought of oh, Freud's a dirty old man. He was talking about babies wanting to have sex. I'm like, no, he was not. And so he was literally talking about where do children derive pleasure or pleasurable experiences from. And so they start off by investigating the world with their mouths. If you observe children, if you observe small children, once they can coordinate hand to mouth movement, where does everything go? Everything goes in the mouth, because that's where the most sense receptors are located at that age. And so it makes sense that they would experience pleasurable feelings from putting things in their mouths. So keep in mind, as you're reading about Freud, that he wasn't talking about babies wanting to have sex, or not adolescents wanting to have sex. We do see some adolescents wanting to have sex. But he wasn't talking about, 6-year-old boys wanting to have sex with their mom in terms of the Oedipal complex. It wasn't so much about that. It was more about mom's attention and wanting to have all of mom's attention to themselves as opposed to having to share it maybe with another parent, dad, siblings, things like that. Another interesting thing that you might learn if you take my personality psychology class, you can learn about this too, is that Erik Erikson, whose theory has highly influenced developmental psychology. You will learn about it in lifespan. You will learn about it in child. You'll learn about it in adolescence. If you're going to nursing, you will learn about it there. Here's the funny thing. Dude didn't have a formal education. He taught at Harvard and lots of other big name schools and never actually had any sort of degree. He had a certificate in psychoanalysis from Anna Freud's school that taught people how to do psychoanalysis. Anna Freud was Sigmund Freud's daughter. But yeah, dude had no formal education. So Piaget's research mostly focused on his kids. That's problematic too. Sample was a little bit biased. Researcher was a little bit biased, right? And this brings us to our second topic of this unit, which is research methods. How do we go about, as scientists, gathering data to support or refute our hypotheses? And hopefully this is a review area for you. Scientific method is something that we've been talking about since, I have a 6th grader and a 8th grader right now. And even when they were doing pandemic homeschool, they were talking about the scientific method. So, 3rd and 5th grade. So hopefully by this point, you know the difference between an independent variable and a dependent variable, all that fun stuff. But we are going to review it and we are going to apply it to research specifically in psychology, but more specifically in child psychology. So we'll be looking at the types of research studies that child psychologists or developmental psychologists might do, and then also be looking at how to understand a research study and how it's written, how it's published, things like that. So this week is all about theories and then how do we investigate them. So I look forward to your questions, and hopefully you will enjoy and learn some pretty cool stuff about the different theorists and how we do science in psychology. One quick tidbit for you, for those of you that maybe still have a negative opinion of Sigmund Freud, he was one of the first people to actually do what we now think of as pet-assisted therapy. He had his dog in the therapy room with him. He said it started out mostly that he brought the dog to help him to decrease his own anxiety, but that he also found that his patients really responded to having an animal in the room to decrease their anxiety as well. So he started bringing his own dog into the therapy room to help his patients and then also to help himself.